Hi, I'm Tim Lippa, Global Chief Product Officer at Assembly, and we're here in Content Cabana at Possible 2026 in Miami Beach. I'm joined by Laura O'Connell from Google for a conversation on AI agents, creative, and where everything's actually landing for advertisers in 2026. Laura, thanks so much for being here today.
Of course. Thank you, Tim, and to Assembly for having me. Super excited to be here.
So, one of the headlines out of Google Next is AI agents work best with people, not instead of people, and not replacing them. What does that human in the approach look like? What do you recommend works best for advertisers and for companies in general?
Yeah, Google Next is really exciting, and what I'm excited about for agents is obviously Google is really invested in the agentic era and invested in agentic capabilities, and something that we are building into our Gemini enterprise. But I love what you just said, that the key message at Google Next was not that agents are replacing humans, but instead working with them, and that human in the loop approach is extremely important. So within Google Next, a few really exciting tools that came to be, for example, Gemini Inbox, where you have this almost hub station for all of your digital little workplaces, and you can have the human interaction when an approval is needed or when you need to come in and give some insight. And so what I think is really interesting is that we're figuring out how to work with the agents and help them to put forth our strategy, but not take us out of the equation.
So you talked a little bit about Gemini Inbox, Agent Designer, IT Safety Switch. These tools all are real. Clients can use them, they're out there. How should an agency or brand be thinking about putting them to work the right way for their business?
So I know I just said that the agentic era is coming, it's really important, but what I also think is important is to be really intentional. So the reality is that agents are out there and all these tools are out there to make sure that we're using them to best of our capabilities, but it's really important, I think, to me and to Google and to partners like Assembly to figure out what do you actually need to get done, and how do you actually utilize agents for that. And so at Google, we think about agents in a couple of different buckets. You've got your agents for day-to-day workflow, which is something that we partner a lot with partners on. You've got agents for the ad experience and how consumers interact with ads. You have the organic experience, like booking a reservation, and then some of those underlying, UCP and Universal Commerce Protocol and some of the underlying pieces there. So I think the answer of how do you think about these tools and how partners and advertisers should be thinking about them is all about being really intentional. What are you trying to accomplish? What is taking up a lot of your time now that could be accomplished with agents? And then most importantly, what do you need to make sure a human is there for? So not just putting it out in the universe, but really being intentional and thoughtful and putting a strategy forth across the organization.
Yeah, super smart. I see that a lot too, where it's, we want to put AI on something, but unless you have the goal of what you're trying to achieve first and then work backwards from it, really hard to get it to work. So I think that's really smart on your part.
We're in a new, exciting time, and I think it's important to test and iterate, but also, again, not proliferate too much.
Couldn't be a Google conversation without talking about search. I'm an old school search person. I started when you can only buy one keyword type. And now AI overviews, AI mode, they've come out there, a lot of reshaping, big advancements, probably the biggest since PMAX coming up. The industry's framing it as like a huge disruption, but you're calling it more of an expansion. What's going on? What do you think about that?
Sure. I mean, let's be honest. 2025 was a year of a lot of questions. The introduction of AI in the search space, I think, led to a lot of questions about what does the future of search look like? What does the future of Google look like? What does the future of users searching on Google look like? Partners had questions, your advertiser had questions, we had questions internally, and what was interesting in 2025 was that was a year when our engineers were cranking, and they delivered a decade's worth of innovation in one year. And so now in 2026, we really are thinking about search as this expansionary moment instead of this disruption, because the scale of search is still tremendous. There are 5 trillion searches on Google annually, which is massive scale, but AI overviews, AI mode, those experiences are now still adding more queries. And most importantly, of course, for Assembly and for your partners, it's more commercial queries. And so this expansionary moment is about how do we think about, not just the what of what someone is asking, but the why and what else they might need. So an example that we often use is, I don't have a pool, but in Miami, you might have a pool. And so, people might ask, why is my pool green? And that is a very simple question that in a past life, you would get a really great answer to. But AI mode and AI overviews are thinking about what else and what's next. Once you figure out why your pool is green, what do you want to do about it? So they'll start to think about if the reason why your pool is green is because of algae, you might need a vacuum. And so I think these that's why I would call it an expansionary moment, because we're not just the what are you looking for, but why, what else do you need, and how can we serve really relevant content for that. And so for that reason, I think 2026 is the year where less questions and more how do we move towards, the best consumer experience.
Yeah, I love that. Like the context that it's adding to what the search is part of that expansionary part of it. Not just having a green pool, but what do I use to fix it? Where do I go with that? How do I do it? Super interesting from, like you said, an expansionary standpoint. So pretty cool. Nearly 40% of video ad creation is going to be built or enhanced with generative AI, up from 20% last year. What does an AI-ready asset ecosystem look like for an advertiser? How would you build that? I get asked a lot by clients as well. So I'm curious.
Sure, I mean, that's an incredible stat, that 40% of video is going to be influenced in generative AI in some way. And I think the add-on that I would make from a Google lens is not only will we see more generative AI utilized in video creation, but also in video creation, particularly on YouTube, it's also really important for the video to be tailored towards YouTube. And so you have two things at once, which you're trying to create as much relevant content as possible, but you're also trying to create content that's really relevant for the channel itself. And so I think when advertisers and partners are thinking about this asset-ready ecosystem, it's not just, do I have the right creative, but does the creative that I'm creating work on the platforms where I'm trying to reach my folks? And so a lot of the tools that Google has for video creation are focused not just on how do you create really great content, but how do you also make sure that it's ready for prime time, so to speak, for exactly.
Yeah, that's great, perfect. No, I'm seeing that as well. And okay, we've got Veo, we've got Imagen, we've got Lyra. What separates these from broader wave of AI gen tools? And when it comes to advertising, like you just talked about, making sure it's fit for purpose with what the end platform is or what the end experience the customer needs to have. But what else do you think about that?
What I have found really fascinating, and no surprise with some of the tools that you mentioned from the Google lens, is not only are they these incredible creative tools where you can create images and video and music, but they are advertising first and they are multimodal. And so what I mean by that is they are there to make really great creative, but they're also there to be what we're calling performance ready. So for example, a lot of the tools that you mentioned, they are taking into account what we would call the YouTube ABCDs of creative. So making really good creative for YouTube is very different than any other platform. And so these tools are really trained to be performance first and say, not only will we make you a great ad that's content ready, but we're also going to follow the best practices of YouTube. And so I think that's what sets them apart, is not just their advertising and performance focus, but also just the multimodal nature of it, which is really exciting. And I would encourage, innovations and updates to all of these tools are coming every single day. Honestly, internally, it's sometimes hard for us to keep up. So the other thing I would encourage partners and players to do is just explore. There's the Gen AI Creative Studio that Google has, really where you can just get in there and see what's possible, to use the conference naming. But I think it's exciting to figure out how can you make really good stuff and make sure that it's actually working.
Very good. I'm just upset that you snuck impossible before I did, because usually I'd be the one that's
Yep, that was a bet going, and I think I won.
So it wouldn't be an end to a conversation without talking about measurement in some form. Media mix modeling, biggest thing probably 30 years ago, went away a little bit. I've always been a fan. I think you need it as a guiding light or principle. It's kind of made a comeback. Attribution, somewhere in the middle. Incrementality is probably the biggest measurement thing clients ask me about now, and that we're doing to show that lift, apply it to performance, feedback loop it. But what do you think is pushing the top organizations to look at what path are they on? How are they considering these things together? How's Google thinking about it?
Listen, you named three really massive components of measurement that really do make up a trifecta, where you cannot just have MMM and media mix modeling. You must also pair that with incrementality and attribution. So I think it's a really obviously complex landscape, but I would say a few of the things that I would say is one, why are the top organizations focusing on it? Well, signal loss is one of the biggest things that we are facing, to take us from what are people doing online to what actions are they taking. And the signal loss is a result of many factors. There's browsers, there's regulations, and other sorts of things. And so I think one of the biggest things that advertisers are realizing is they have to focus on data strength and the data that they're putting into the system. And then I think they're also realizing that they have to, as we talk about a lot at this conference, is match what they're doing to outcomes. I think one of the exciting times and things that we're partnering on with Assembly, and you, as you well know, is really integrating Google's marketing mix model, Meridian, into Stage to really understand how do we close that gap between the actions people are taking online to really how they come to fruition for clients. But I think measurement will continue to be something to be iterated on, and I'm not sure if we ever will be perfect, but we can continue to close that gap, and partners like Assembly, I think, and Stage are huge for doing that.
That's great. No, and I totally agree. If you can't get that data right at the foundation, none of the rest of it matters. And having that ability with Meridian to connect that all quickly, first party MMM all the way through the other parts of the Google measurement stack, that's been a huge benefit for us, and we appreciate that too. So Laura, I think that's all the questions for today. Really appreciate you joining me. I think we win the record for most interruptions, helicopters, conference service events, General Walker
for that, I will gladly accept it. Thank you, Tim.
Well done. Really appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Appreciate the conversation.
Cool.